Marketing strategies have always been very similar, whether the product be something that you use every day or something that's very novel. This presentation is going to look at cigar lounges and how its marketing strategies allow its business owners to get a little extra money in their pockets. So what makes cigars and cigar lounges so unique or novel? The first part is that cigars are an acquired taste, such as anything, as delicacy foods or even cigarettes, as a majority of the country smoked cigarettes back in the early 1900s. The second part is that cigars don't particularly taste good, but for some reason people like them. Cigars can be liked to black coffee. The next aspect is that a very small percentage of the population actually enjoys cigars, about 7% of the U.S. population. Another thing that you see is commercials everywhere. When was the last time you saw a cigar commercial? And finally, they take a while to consume. The average cigar takes around 2 to 4 hours to consume. So you really have to sit down and you really have to go through it. It's not something you can try really quick. First, taking a look at a few examples, we have local cigar shops such as CC&H here in Keene. There's also the station at Castro's. This is a chain. Castro's back room is also a chain. Customers can usually tell a lot about an establishment before they even set foot inside, and cigar lounges are no different. However, cigar lounges do not require many attractors, considering only a certain population is interested in them. There's a few things to discuss. The first thing is that they're relatively rare. This sends a message that cigar lounges are not for everybody. The second thing is that they're relatively small. This affirms a unique taste, considering that small spaces are usually off-putting to the general population. The third thing is that they're relatively rare. This is a motivation to seek out the location. Because they're so remote, customers might find one or two in a city. Customers learn a lot about an establishment upon walking into the establishment. One of the first things that a customer will get is a message in their face. In a cigar lounge, usually the customer is greeted by whoever is running it. There's a few other things that imply a message. The first thing is that there's usually promotional cigars, which is more of a rarity. One of the examples is CC&H, who has Rocky Patel cigars, as they just had an event. Another thing to consider is that there is non-cigar accessories. These are things like pipes, smoking tobacco, cutting lighters. And this shows a message of variety that invites people other than the customers that are coming in to sit down and have a cigar. Other messages can be shown through smaller cigars, which are known as cigarellos, that invites newcomers to come in and try something novel. This is more of a taste test. Another way is with special cigars. These cigars are flavored and they're usually right at the beginning. An example is right here in the third picture. You can see where we have Java cigars. These are flavored, and the flavors usually are mint or latte. Once the customer is done walking into the store, they have to walk a bit further into it in order to get into the walk-in humidor. This is a staple in most cigar shops, as it shows a message of freshness. It also shows ethos, as they know what they're doing and they understand the proper way to package and store cigars. Another thing to consider is that the walk-in humidor will have big-name brands. These are attractors. These are the things that cigar smokers know the names of, and they're more likely to buy them. The other thing is that there's a lot of variety, and it can even be overwhelming to an extent, and it requires depth and relatively deep thought as to what you're going to buy if you're going to smoke something. You can see the picture of this walk-in humidor here, and there's anywhere from 10 to 20 different cigars. Going deeper into the walk-in humidor, the customer will notice a few things. The first thing to notice is that the big brand names are at eye level. As discussed, big name brands can be an attractor because they're familiar. Big name brands can also be a magnetizer because since they're at eye level, the focus is already on them. The second thing to know is that less known brands are placed above or below. No-name brands are interesting because they're less attractive. However, if a customer hasn't seen that brand before, they're experiencing change and their focus could change. The third thing to note is that better deals require deeper thought. Sometimes even physical requirements are needed. As seen in the second image, in the top right-hand corner, there's a larger cigar for about $9, as where everything at eye level is about $11. It's physically difficult to get to that good deal. Looking even closer at the labeling and packaging of cigars, it's very clear that the producer is trying to use pathos on the customer. This can be shown in the coloring, descriptions, and other aesthetics that's used in the packaging. The first image shows an example of color, as well as a big name brand in Perdomo. However, the box and label also has vivid color that's gold and flashy that is an attractor as well as a magnetizer, as discussed before. The second is the description. In the second image, the producer is trying to draw the customer's attention with a vivid red coloring with a language that says that this is the best cigar, mainly the best cigar of 2014. This can entice and shift focus and make the cigar attractive without the customer even knowing what brand the cigar is. The third thing is the extra aesthetics. In the third and fourth image, this is clear. The third image shows a vivid, flashy gold tubing that doesn't necessarily tell what the brand is. However, it's very attractive and can shift focus. The fourth image can also shift focus, as this image is in a relatively low positioning in the walk-in humidor. However, this is unique considering that there are leaves that are lining the box and there's a ribbon that's covering the cigars. This is attractive and can shift focus. The leaving is also a change in how cigars are usually packaging. This can shift focus. Upon leaving the walk-in humidor, the customer will walk into what is probably the most important place of the shop, the lounge area itself. There's a few things to notice about the lounge area. The first thing is that it's usually in the back or usually the last place the customer will walk into. This gives more opportunity for attractors and magnetizers to do their work, as there's a large variety of cigars that are seen upon walking through into the back. The second thing to notice is the comfy chairs that invite you to sit down and socialize. The images shown below further show this, as they're in a circular and close proximity. The third thing to notice is the pictures and artifacts that are in the area and on the wall. This tells the customer a lot about the source. In the first image, there's credibility and ethos, considering that there's a cigar creator in the image shown. In the second photo shown below, there is an image on the wall of numerous patches. This is
Once a customer
interesting,
is
considering
done
that the owner
going
was a
from
member of the
layout
United
to label
States
to
Navy.
lounge and even entering, he or she can draw some conclusions. First is Aristotle's logos, pathos, and ethos. Pathos and ethos are prominent in the cigar lounge, as we've gone over. Pathos mainly goes with the owner, as the owner greets you on your way in to feel like a warm welcome. The owner will point you toward his or her favorite cigars, and he will probably sit down and have a cigar with you in the lounge. Ethos comes from the product storage and the product knowledge. This comes from the walk-in humidor to the recommendations that the owner gives you. Next, conclusions can be drawn from source, message, and receiver. The source is informed and interactive. This was touched on a bit already, with the informant being through the knowledge of his or her product and his or her recommendations. The interactive part comes again through the greeting at the door and sitting down and having a cigar with his customer. The message is unique, socializing, and relaxing environment. At the beginning, the customer will notice that only 7% of the population smokes cigars. The cigar lounge may not be too different from other marketing strategies, but is definitely a unique experience in itself. The socializing and relaxing aspect come from the lounge itself, as the customer will notice when he actually enters and when he sits down with the owner for a cigar. The receiver requires attention and prior liking. As discussed prior, in order to enjoy a cigar properly, the customer probably has to have a prior liking of it. However, the owner will do what he or she can in order to change the person's mind and shift their focus so that they can try a cigar for the first time. The attention aspect comes from, again, the overwhelming amount of color, variety, and size of cigar options. Another conclusion that can be taken by the customers from the book called You May Also Like. This invites newcomers to try something novel. The book discusses how novel things are not liked because, as humans, customers are not used to change and therefore do not like change. Therefore, conclusions can be drawn from persuasion when attitude change is invoked through the extensions of You May Also Like by having smaller or flavored cigars at the front of the shop in order to ease the customer into something new. There's also attractors and magnetizers from You May Also Like. This comes from labeling and packaging and shelving. The main attractors are the name brands that catch your eye directly, not just because the customer is drawn to big brand names, but because the big brand names are next to each other and at eye level on the shelf. Packaging and labeling can be things such as what the box or cigar is covered in, what it's lined with, or how colorful it is. Another conclusion from persuasion is the choice fits the expert opinions. This can be from critics or owners. The critics, in case where the 7% are recommending cigars, and the owner, where the owner is recommending cigars to smoke. Finally, persuasion gives us the conclusion of keywords and sentence framing. This is done through the description, whether it be the use of language of Best Cigar of 2014, or any other kind of descriptive language that would use pathos, and foreign names that would emphasize ethos, mainly Habano cigars made in Cuba, which is very familiar to the 7% and other populations. Finally, the customer can take conclusions from the likelihood elaboration model with the two roots of central and peripheral. The central root is lacking somewhat with position of liking cigars previously established. Although there is the idea that a consumer could have a central root in the sense of wanting to be correct that he is part of the correct 7% of the population that likes to smoke cigars. The peripheral root involves a focus change based on packaging and other sales. This is focused around the walk-in humidor and the front of the shop, where customers are exposed to an overwhelming amount of products and varieties, which shifts focus from place to place. And with that, that concludes the presentation of Label to Layout in Cigar Lounges. I thank you for watching.